This is Megan from Acquia. I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time out of their day to join us. We're excited that you're here. Today, we're discussing Drupal 7 end of life is near. Migrate to Drupal 9 fast and easy. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. If you have any audio issues, please send them in the Q&A tab and I will assist you. If you have any questions for the presenters, please submit them in the Q&A tab as well, and they will answer them at the end of the presentation. Slides and recording of this webinar will be posted to acquia.com and also sent to you over email within the next few days. So without further delay, I will pass it over to Kara Hall, Associate Product Marketing Manager at Acquia, to get us started. So Kara, over to you.
Thank you, Megan. As Megan said, my name is Kara Hall. I am the Associate Product Marketing Manager at Acquia on the Drupal Cloud side of the house. I'll pass it off to Emily to introduce herself.
Hi everyone, I'm Emily Lenoy. I'm a product manager for the Acquia MigrateAccelerate product.
And I'm Angie Byron. I'm Senior Director of Product and Community Development and work on the, Acquia's Drupal acceleration team.
So today we're going to be talking a bit about, as Megan said, D7 to D9 migrations. We're going to give you an intro, benefits of Drupal 9, what's involved in a D7 to D9 migration, Acquia Migrate Accelerate intro, a product walkthrough, and then how you can use Acquia Migrate Accelerate. And really quickly, before we get started, we're going to launch a poll question here. So there you go. If you can see it, the question is, what version of Drupal are you currently on? And if you're on multiple versions, just answer the one that you're most concerned about being on or transitioning off of. So D6, D7, D8, or D9, or not on Drupal.
A few more seconds. Okay, I'm going to close the poll.
Thank you, Ava. So as we can see, we have, it looks like about 71% are on Drupal 7, and then 23% are on Drupal 8, and then about 3% on Drupal 9, and then also 3% not on Drupal at all. So that's actually great to know. Angie, next slide, please. So as we talked about, we're talking about migrations from D7 to D9. So what is the problem that we're facing going into that transition? So why are we doing this migration? What is the problem that we're facing? One more click, Angie. Perfect, thank you. D7 is end of life November 28, 2022, and D8 is end of life November 2nd of 2021. So that is why a D7 to D9 migration is so important and is such a hot topic right now. And then why is a D7 to D9 migration so hard? Drupal 8 is significantly changed the way that content and configuration is stored in a database. And because of this, an update can't simply be applied to existing Drupal 7 sites. Instead, the content and configuration data from Drupal 7 must be migrated to a new Drupal 9 site. Furthermore, not all contributed modules have automatic upgrade paths. This may require a manual or custom migration. Drupal 9 is significantly changed how themes are structured, and these changes can't be migrated. Instead, a theme must be rebuilt to work in Drupal 9. Although there are automation tools available, setting these up can still be a very complex process, which is why that migration can be kind of hard and tricky to navigate. So today, most Drupal users are still on Drupal 7. As you can see, we ran a poll here that shows that 61% of users are still currently on Drupal 7. So if you're in that category, like 71% of our attendees are here today, then there's no worries. There's still time to migrate and you're still with a majority of Drupal users. Now I'll pass it off to Angie to talk to us about the benefits of Drupal 9.
Thanks a lot, Kara. So yeah, if you're still on Drupal 7, like Kara said, you're in good company, but we really do want people to move to Drupal 9. And why is that? It's not just because the number is higher. We actually have done a whole bunch of work with Drupal 8 and 9 to vastly increase both the capabilities of the core product, as well as the amount of awesomeness that you could do just right out of the box without having to install a bunch of modules, and a lot of key components such as configuration management, decoupled support, all these kinds of great content author experience things, all this kind of stuff is just built in out of the box, ready to go. And probably the most exciting thing in terms of your Drupal 8 and 9 and 10 sites is what we call an easy upgrade path. And that's not just, kind of whitewashing. It actually is 5 steps. So I saw that like 23% of you are still on Drupal 8 and trying to move to Drupal 9, which is a little, harrowing because you've only got till, roughly the end of the year to do that migration before you kind of fall out of community support. But the migration from 8 to 9, 9 to 10, 10 to 11, and so on going into the future is a quick 5-step process and much more like an upgrade than a migration. So that's one of the most compelling reasons, I think, to move to Drupal 9. So as Kara mentioned, Drupal 7 and 8 end of life is coming, which is why we're doing this webinar now to try to get folks out in front of it. Drupal 8 support actually ends before Drupal 7, which is a little puzzling. The reason for that is both because number one, it has a much easier upgrade path, which we just talked about. And then number two, because Drupal 8 and above is written on the Symfony platform, which is a framework for doing PHP stuff, we have to follow their end of life schedule. And so they go end of life every 3 years. And so that's exactly what we're doing as well. But Drupal 7 support was originally supposed to end on the same day, but we extended it by a year. The core committers, the security team all got together and had this discussion. Because of COVID, a lot of people had budget cuts and other sorts of things. So we moved it out by a year so that people have a little bit of extra time, because that one is, quite a bit more involved. And if November of 22 even gives you the sweats, don't worry about it. There's even commercial Drupal 7 extended support that will take you all the way to 2025. And Acquia is one of the vendors that is offering that. But obviously the best thing to do is to get off of Drupal 7 onto Drupal 9, where all the new innovations are happening. So we'll talk about that right now.
Real fast, Angie, we'd like to launch another poll question. So that question is, where are you in your current D9 migration process? So we have haven't started yet, researching, just started, partially through it, and then I don't even want to think about it.
Because, sometimes you don't want to think about it. So we're just trying to give all the options. Yeah.
Okay, I think we can close the poll.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. So then we'll walk through those results really fast. So we have about 20% that haven't started yet, 58% are researching, 8% just started, 3% partially through it, and 13% don't even want to think about it.
Great. You're in a good spot then for this webinar, because we're going to talk to you about both what the process is like if you're doing it on your own, and then we'll talk about a product that we have that helps accelerate the work that you're doing so that it's, makes it a little bit easier for you. But I don't want to spoil anything, so we'll jump into this next section here. So in contrast to the Drupal 8 to 9 upgrade steps I showed you, Drupal 7 to 9 is a migration and not an upgrade. So Kara already talked about a lot of this stuff, but when you're doing a D7 to D9 migration, first you're doing analysis and planning, and that covers both your content, figuring out how much of this content do I actually want to keep, versus how much of it is like, old stuff from like 2008 that I don't need anymore. You're also going to be doing a lot of look at the functionality of your site, saying what modules am I using? Is there a Drupal 9 equivalent of that module? If there's not, what's the closest equivalent of Drupal 9 module for what I want to do? Has the functionality I need used back then, has it moved into core sense? Because Drupal 8 and 9 are much more fully featured out of the box. There's also a DevOps component, so you kind of have to look at your hosting requirements. Drupal 7 came out in 2011, January. So it's now a decade old. So, it supported many like older versions of PHP, MySQL, things like that. Drupal 9, because it's trying to be forward reaching and making sure that you're on a secure platform going forward, that supports newer versions of PHP and MySQL. So you might need to do some work on your hosting platform to get you up to speed on a platform that's, robust enough to run Drupal 9. Then there's a data import component. So unlike Drupal 6 to 7 or 5 to 6, those older transitions where what you would essentially do is run an update.php script that would make radical changes to your production database as it was running to try to move from one major version to the other. And that was always a terrifying process because if you had bugs, you might have downtime, all kinds of things. So in Drupal 8 and above, in order to do those major migrations, you actually set up a new site separate from your old site and do the content migration from there. So you say, okay, let's keep my production site up and running. Let's pull the content from my production site into my new Drupal 9 site, and then cut the switch over when you're ready. So much less harrowing process that way. So for your data import, what you're going to be doing there is you're going to be learning what's called the Drupal Migrate API. And this is a really, really robust object-oriented library that deals with entity, transform, and load. And it basically makes it so you can migrate from anything, whether it's Drupal or CSV files or WordPress or whatever it is, into Drupal 9. The caveat is it's all object-oriented. It's a little bit different if you're used to Drupal 7 PHP, so there's learning that, kind of going up that learning curve. And then finally, for anything on this side of the line, business logic and presentation, now you're talking about stuff that you kind of have to do on your own because the community is not going to be able to help you with that. So any custom code that you have to port yourself. A lot of that is, moving from procedural to object-oriented PHP, and there's a lot of changes, YAML files and all kinds of new stuff in Drupal 9. And then finally, your presentation layer, as Kara mentioned, there is no automated way to just take what you have in Drupal 7 and move to Drupal 9. You have to redo that as well. The advantage of that is that Twig on Drupal 9 is a much more secure theming system. It protects from XSS vulnerabilities and other things out of the box. But because of the transition between the two, they're not compatible. So you do have to port that theme as well. So altogether, this starts adding up time and cost. And that's what makes it a little scary. And that's a big contributing reason to the fact that there are more Drupal 7 sites today. So if you're migrating from Drupal 7 to 9, these are kind of the steps. By far, the #1 thing that you want to do is audit your existing modules and custom code and all of that, and really ask yourself if you need it. Because if you don't need it, you've just reduced the complexity of your migration. And again, check not only what contributed modules are available, but also check to see if stuff that you've written custom code for is now just included out of the box in core, because core is much, much more fully featured in Drupal 8 and 9. Then you're going to want to get on the latest version of all your Drupal 7 projects. That is just nice because then you get the latest in bug fixes, the latest in anything to smooth the migration path, things like that. Drupal.org has a great known upgrade issues page, and you can read through that, and that will help prepare you for any kinds of, I tried to migrate and all of a sudden my body fields didn't show up. That's a known issue, it turns out, and there's a way to solve that. Then you're going to install a fresh copy of Drupal 9, as I mentioned, on a different environment than your production environment. You're going to migrate your Drupal 7 data into it, and you're going to port your custom code and your custom theme. And one key thing is, that Drupal 9 site, you do not want to make content changes there. You always want to make content changes here on your Drupal 7 site and sync the changes over. Okay, so that is the overview of the process, how you do a Drupal 7 to 9 migration. But next, we're going to give a little introduction to the product that we've developed to try to make that a little bit easier for people. So Emily, I'll kick it off to you.
Awesome, thanks, Angie. All right, so Acquia recognizes how challenging the Drupal 7 to Drupal 9 migration can be, and also how important the migration is. I mean, Angie and Kara talked about the end of life that's coming for Drupal 7 and also all the benefits for Drupal 9. So that being said, next slide, please, Angie. Acquia built a product called Acquia Migrate Accelerate to help our customers get onto Drupal 9 as quickly and as easily as possible. So Acquia's Drupal Cloud and Marketing Cloud platforms enable our customers to migrate, build, run, optimize, personalize their Drupal sites. And Acquia Migrate Accelerate sits within our Drupal Cloud platform. So Acquia's Drupal Cloud is a fully managed cloud platform that is highly scalable, highly secure, fully optimized for Drupal. And Acquia Migrate is fully integrated with the cloud platform. Next slide, please. Awesome. And actually, Acquia Migrate Accelerate is one of 3 Migrate products that Acquia offers. I noticed a couple of you are starting from non-Drupal CMSs. And so really quickly, the Acquia Migrate Analyze and Acquia Migrate Replatform products are actually intended to ease the migration from non-Drupal CMSs to Drupal 9 Acquia Migrate Analyze helps you prepare for a successful and efficient migration by letting you extract and analyze your content before the migration. And Acquia Migrate Replatform helps to speed up that migration with automation. But the main focus today, Acquia Migrate Accelerate, is designed specifically for the Drupal 7 to Drupal 9 migration and helps our customers accelerate that migration by up to 80%. So we're really excited about it. All right, so let's get more into the details of Acquia Migrate Accelerate. So Acquia Migrate Accelerate, we'll also refer to it as AMA because it's kind of a mouthful. AMA is built on Drupal's Migrate API. We also have layered on top of UI that is very intuitive and really informative. You can do things like preview data before you migrate it. You can select the data that you want to migrate, see your progress, kind of read translated error messages and things like that. We also provide a migration environment. So that's a huge benefit of Acquia Migrate Accelerate. And Acquia's best practices and knowledge about the Drupal 7 to Drupal 9 migration are built in. We have a recommendations engine that you can take advantage of for your whole migration. Okay, as I mentioned, AMA can help accelerate your migration by up to 80%. Now, the degree to which AMA speeds up your migration will depend on the characteristics of your Drupal site. But in general, AMA helps to take some of that analysis and planning work off of your plate. I noticed that I think 60% of you are kind of in the researching phase of the migration. And so AMA includes that recommendations engine that I mentioned to help you quickly, view the Drupal 9 equivalents for the Drupal 7 modules that you're using. And as I mentioned, you can also determine which data you do and don't want to migrate, and you can always come back later and migrate more of it. It also takes a lot of the DevOps work off of your plate with the migration environment that AMA includes. It's integrated with the cloud platform, and it's optimized for the D7 to D9 migration. And as I mentioned, AMA is built on the Drupal migration API. And so it takes a lot of the guesswork out of the data import process that you'll need to do as a part of the D7 to D9 migration. And then finally, we recommend using cloud IDEs, another one of Acquia's cloud platform products, to help rebuild the business logic once you've migrated everything that you want to from your D7 to D9 site. And same thing with the presentation layer. You can use Acquia's Site Studio product to pick up where the migration leaves off and rebuild your presentation layer. All right, and now I'll hand it over to Angie to do a product walkthrough and show you how those things work in practice.
Awesome, thanks, Emily. So just to recap, so the three main components of Acquia Migrate Accelerate that I'll be walking through here shortly. One is that dedicated cloud migrate environment. I mentioned how when you're moving from 7 to 9, you really need that kind of dedicated space to perform the migration. Two is that module recommendation engine, where we handle that analysis and planning part for you. So you don't any longer need that huge gargantuan spreadsheet of doom that we all make. That's like, okay, well, I was using field collection module, and I guess that's paragraphs now. And it looks like people are complaining about this thing in the issue queue. That all goes away because we've done that research for you. And then the third part of it is a robust responsive UI. It was actually built in React based on the headless Drupal components that are in Drupal 8 and 9. So, we're kind of eating our own or drinking our own champagne. I think that's what we try to say nowadays with the decoupled stuff. So stepping right in here. Once this product is for Acquia Cloud customers, Acquia Cloud Enterprise specifically. Once you've been granted the entitlement from your account manager, you'll be able to step through a little wizard, and at the end of the wizard, you're going to get this new environment, which is your Migrate environment. Now, you might be saying that it looks a little different than my other ones, Dev, Stage, and Prod. Why is that? And it turns out there's a couple of good reasons for that. Number one, we've added some extra, kind of sauce to this environment. For example, this refresh button that automatically downsyncs a fresh copy of all of your data and files from production so that you're always migrating against the latest stuff. The other reason we've done that is because we don't want to disrupt the flow that you have going with your production site, where you can drag and drop code and database and files. So you can keep the production site up and running alongside your migration and let that take as long as it needs to without disrupting your live website. And then the last thing is that we do not want you to accidentally click and drag some code and databases from one environment to the other, because if you take a Drupal 9 database and throw it in Drupal 7 code or vice versa, you can totally hose things up. And so, you know, we've taken great steps at all points of this project to basically sand off the rough edges and stop you from, you know, making some common mistakes that make the migration much harder than it needs to be. This is a peek under the hood at that module recommendation engine that Emily referred to. So here's where we, you know, have this big JSON file that looks at all of the different modules. It says, okay, if you were using paragraphs in Drupal 7, we're going to replace that with this version of paragraphs. And oh, by the way, you need these patches in order to make it work. And once we've done that homework, we'll mark it as vetted as true. And that means that our engineers have done the homework and we've figured out what is the right path for this module, that module, the other one. And when we do that, we automatically put those modules that we've looked at in your code base automatically, so they're right in there ready to go. The other thing we do is anything that has been marked vetted, we turn it on by default so that you get the most complete and error-free migration possible. So your new Drupal 9 site is all set up. It's all composery, which is a new fangledy way of managing dependencies in Drupal 9. And so it's all set up with the best practices ready to go without you having to do anything. This is the first page of the migration tool. So what it does is it shows you a list of all of the content that you had on your Drupal 7 site, and you're allowed to check off whichever ones that you want to move over, which ones you don't, that kind of thing. So this can be useful as like a very rudimentary content audit. If you see content types in here that was like just a test that you were playing around with one time, you can uncheck it to skip it. The other thing that this knows a lot about is dependencies. So for example, it will not let you check off, you know, user accounts unless you also check off this taxonomy term that the user accounts require. So really trying to make sure that all of the data that you need in your site is all ready to go, and you're not accidentally, for example, importing comments before you've imported articles, before you've imported users, and things like that. The other thing that you'll notice is this is all written in what I call site builder terminology. Because if you're using the Drupal Migrate API, and some of you are partially through your migrations, you might know this, all of that is very developer facing. So, you know, you'll have migrations like d7_node_dot entity, blah, blah, blah. We get rid of all of that and we really surface things in kind of a Drupal human readable way so that someone who is not the most senior engineer in your organization can actually get started on the migration quickly. This is the migration dashboard. This is where you'll spend a lot of time. Here's where you see all of those, you know, all of those content types and taxonomy terms and components and such that you checked off in the previous step will all show up here. And as you go through your migration, it will automatically sort your different migrations into needs review, completed, that kind of thing, depending on if there were errors encountered or not. The reason we split things up this way is because oftentimes the best approach to doing a D7 to D9 migration is kind of do it iteratively and a little bit at a time. So instead of having to migrate all of the content and all of the comments and this kind of thing, we break it up for you so that you can focus on one content type or one area of your site at a time, make sure that's working okay, and then move on to other things. As Emily mentioned, this is kind of a cool feature that we have, which is the ability to preview the data before it's migrated. Using the open source tools, what you'll end up doing is kind of importing everything and then checking to see what broke and then rolling it all back, fixing whatever it was, re-importing it and that kind of thing. And it takes a long time and it's very tedious. So what the preview allows you to do is compare raw before and after values to make sure that things are making it through okay. And we also render out a preview of what that's going to look like when it's actually on your website. And that's really helpful because, for example, you can check things like, you know, I have broken images, so I got to fix that on my, you know, production site, that kind of thing. And you can either paginate through, you know, one record at a time, or you can, you know, look at this, browse the site URL and put a specific URL that you're interested in. It will pull that one up, which is useful if you have like, say, 20,000 press releases and you're really interested in what the one that was posted last week looks like on your new site. So this is what the dashboard looks like in action. So you'll check off one or more different things to import, and it will go ahead and progress through them. And then this little progress meter counts up how far along you are in your content migration. Things are automatically sorted into either needs review if it encountered some errors, or completed if it imported everything and didn't encounter any errors. So as you can see, it's a nice responsive UI. Things progress pretty quickly. We call this thing the swooshy whooshy internally. It's kind of cool to see that count up and feel, you know, oh man, something's happening. Like things are going for me, yay. But yeah, so that's pretty much how that product works. Well, when I talked about errors, so we click needs review and we'll see some things that, oh, we encountered some messages. for that, we have the messages console. So this will check not only sort of weird errors coming from Drupal itself, these are those. It will also give you sort of Acquia recommended solutions on what to do about that problem. So this is where we've kind of looked across our customer base, found what are the most common errors that they're running into, and whatever they are, we go ahead and we compile those and give you kind of I call it a Drupal human readable. It's not quite human readable, but a Drupal human readable version of that. And we're checking not only migration problems, like for example, this one is saying, a path is pointing to something that doesn't exist. It's saying, hey, maybe that's a view. Did you know you have to manually create your views on your Drupal 9 site? Go do that. We also check what are called entity validation errors. So this will be things on your Drupal 7 site that are wrong from a data integrity point of view. For example, let's say you had, in this case, it's trying to reference a media ID 1851, but media ID 1851 doesn't exist. So that's something to fix on the Drupal 7 site. Hit that refresh button, sync it back down, and then you're ready to go. And in case you are, kind of a Drupal expert who knows the Migrate API inside and out, we also surface that for you in the UI as well under the Details tab. So here you can see what the mapping is between which fields and the other fields. It will show you, what we call a shared structure for content items. It will show you under the hood what Drupal refers to those things as. And that's really helpful for your debugging if you run into any problems. So. All right, so that's the walkthrough. And now I'll pass it back to Emily, who can talk to you a little bit about how to use it.
Great, thanks, Angie. All right, so next slide, please. All right, so I know a lot of the people on this webinar are trying to figure out how to approach the migration or are in the early stages of planning. And so AMA is a really great fit for single site migrations. We don't recommend it for complex multi-sites, although you can migrate one site of a multi-site at a time with its current functionality. AMA will also be really beneficial to you if you utilize a lot of the top 100 contrib modules. A lot of those migrations have been vetted by our team. And if you have a more complex data model, AMA will help you navigate that. And finally, AMA can help you perform what we call a lift and shift migration. So you can just migrate what you have in your Drupal 7 site over to Drupal 9. And then if you want to do some rebuilding, re-envisioning, you can do that once you get your site migrated onto D9 before going live. So AMA is included for free with any Acquia Cloud Platform Enterprise subscription. It's not currently supported for Site Factory or Acquia Cloud Professional, but if you are an existing Acquia Cloud Platform Enterprise customer, just talk to your account manager and they can get you set up so you can get started with AMA. You'll be able to access it directly from the UI, from the Cloud Platform UI, once you have the entitlement, as Angie showed. And if you are new to Acquia, feel free to request a demo. We'll provide a link to do so after this webinar. And if you need extra help with your migration, we actually have Jason Harkleroad on the call with us from our professional services team, and I'll let him talk through some of those options now.
Yes, hello. The AMA tool is free to use as a self-serve option for our customers, but we do have some professional services available to our customers to provide training and consulting as well as full implementations. So our quick start offering does help with planning for a migration, getting started, provisioning and getting access to the AMA tool, walking through the actual tool itself, the dashboard that Angie had demoed. We can provide some guidance on how you can go about troubleshooting and resolving issues that come up during the migration. We'll provide some advice on how to port your custom modules, how to address any issues with community or contrib modules that aren't available or have changed, and then talk about re-implementing your theme. And then just provide our general best practices for using Acquia Cloud. So that's our quick start offering. Then we also have Quick Start Plus, some the ability to offer some consulting hours, like more of office hours, so we can extend that for several weeks beyond the start of your project. That kind of gives you that ability to reach back to a technical architect from the professional services team and get help and advice as you go. And finally, we can offer a full implementation where we would use the AMA tool to accelerate the project, but then do the entire migration for you and work with your team and execute it. So those are services that we do offer from the professional services team. Thanks.
Okay. And then I think we'll go ahead and pass it along to now the Q&A part of the webinar. So let's see what we got.
So I've fielded several questions in the Q&A section already. So one question was about the front end needing to be rewritten. Do you want to talk to that?
Sure, yeah. So Drupal 7 used a templating language called PHP Template. And this is, what as it was added in Drupal 6, I want to say, or something, some earlier version of Drupal. And in that templating language, basically you'd have like these HTML files that were mostly HTML, but you'd also like, PHP print $sign variable within them. And then that's kind of how you made out your theme. It would be, you'd print out the dynamic parts, and then you would, Drupal would feed them through kind of almost like a Play-Doh machine. If you ever like squish the Play-Doh through like a little, mold, it would take the content in your site and squish it through your templates. And so that's how theming works in Drupal. The problem with PHP Template is that in order to avoid a situation where someone could, for example, enter their location as, JavaScript alert, blah, 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 and do nasty things, you had to have kind of an encyclopedic knowledge of all of these various filter options that you have to run text through in Drupal. So there's filter XSS, there's filter XSS admin, there's running it in plain text, there's all kinds of things. And a lot of people don't know those. And so they're just like, whatever, I'm just gonna print a variable and be done. So we replaced PHP Template with Twig, which is a project we got from the Symfony kind of world, because Twig kind of recognizes the fact that people aren't experts at filtering, insecure input on output, and instead just assumes everything's insecure and filters everything for you automatically. So in the world of Twig, your template files end up being just essentially little brackety things with whatever variable that you want. And there's a support for conditionals and some other things, but it makes theming, one, far less error prone from a security point of view, and two, a lot easier for you to hand off to someone who knows front end really well, but doesn't necessarily know PHP. And so, they can go ahead and just put things into the template markup that they've already created. And as long as they get the names right, the Play-Doh factory will continue to work. So what porting a theme is like, is you basically have to, take the data, or take your template files and, move them into the new theme. You have to replace all your PHP with these little Twig template holder things. And then any logic that you had kind of on the business side of things, you either put in a PHP file or you put in a module somewhere, that kind of thing. So what a lot of people do, because that's kind of a lot of work for, moving things over. I mean, you get better security out of it. You get the ability to hire cheaper people to do your themes who don't necessarily know Drupal and PHP and HTML and CSS. You can focus on people who know just the front end stuff. But nevertheless, that's like a lot of work. So what a lot of people will do, especially because some of these Drupal 7 sites are, almost a decade old at this point, is they will kind of make a shift as well of their look and feel of their site, maybe adopt things like web component-based design, other things like that to try to, kind of say, well, I know I have to port the theme, but while we're doing that anyway, let's spruce up the look and feel of the site. Let's get on modern web standards and this kind of thing. So that's how a lot of people kind of take that on. I guess one other thing I should say about that is one of the reasons we recommend Site Studio as an alternative to doing that work by yourself is that Site Studio offers a low-code way to create the look and feel of your site. So someone still needs to know a bit of CSS and HTML, but for the most part can theme things through the UI. And that makes it much easier for people to kind of get something that looks a lot like their site up and running quick and easy.
I definitely agree that Site Studio can help get things going, as well as provide a low-code option that that designers and non-technical people can use going forward, and professional services team can also help with that. The second question another question we had was about customers who are hosting their D7 sites somewhere else and want to use the AMA tool.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is not supported. Because Acquia invested all of this money into this tool and all the upgrade paths and all this kind of stuff, the product is being held as like an Acquia specific feature for now, at least. As we get closer to the D7 deadline, I don't know if that will change, but currently you do have to be an Acquia Cloud customer in order to use it. But that said, what we do is anytime that we're investigating a customer issue and we run across a bug in either contrib migration or core migration, our team will go ahead and fix whatever the problem was. And then we always leave a patch behind, you know, that fixes the issue that we had. So what we are doing, and a lot of times we're working with the maintainers of the Migrate system, as well as maintainers of these various contrib modules, like web form migration, things like that, in order to make sure that the entire community benefits from the changes that our customers are getting. But the nice thing about AMA is you don't have to hunt and peck for all of these different things. When you run the wizard and you create your Drupal 9 site on that new environment, it's already been run through that module recommendation engine, so you already have all those fixes just in there automatically. So it eliminates a lot of work. So unfortunately, I can't say that this works for non-Acquia customers, but I can say that all of the things that we found and kind of knocked our face into as we built this product, the fixes for those are out in the Drupal issue queue, and they're just released under GPL v2.
So the process would then be to move your Drupal 7 site to Acquia first, and then you'll get access to the AMA tool as a customer, and then you can use it to conduct your migration to Drupal 9 and then launch that site.
That's correct.
All right. I think tagging on to what you had just talked about, are there any plans to open source the AMA tool?
Yeah, so the AMA backend, the thing that generates all of the JSON that our front end consumes, that is open source, and you can find the code on GitHub, I think, on Packagist anyway. But the actual UI, the intention is not to release that as open source. That is proprietary to us. It's React.js, so it's in a different, memory space and stuff like that. The other thing that is GPL, as I mentioned, are all of the fixes that we've had to do to core and contrib and all the other different, components based around AMA. So we've made numerous contributions to the core migrate system. A lot of the whatever underscore migrate modules out there, all of that work that we've done, you benefit from using the open source code, as long as you kind of dig through that issue queue a bit to find this stuff. I can't speak to the future of this tool. I really hope that at some point we open source it for everybody, because obviously, if 100% of Acquia customers move to Drupal 9, that's great, but we still have, all these folks in the community as well. But at the moment, it is an Acquia exclusive feature. So, hopefully in the future, I can tell you a different thing. But at the moment, I want to reemphasize that all the improvements that we've found and we've made to the code, those are all out there in the community for anyone to use.
Great. So one question is about, let's see, what's the rough amount of time it takes to do a migration? I'll just answer this and say that as we had on our slides, it does reduce the amount of time to conduct the migration, but as the asker had mentioned, everybody is different in terms of the amount of content they've got and the amount of custom code they've got and their skill level. And so those are all be factors that go into the amount of time it does take. I will say that for any migration project, you want to build in time to verify that all the feature functionality does work on your site after migration, after you've re-implemented anything custom or started using new modules. And then you want to also go through the process of validating that all of your content has been migrated and looks good with the new theme that you've implemented. So that does take some time and usually requires having a lot of the stakeholders, like your content authors and your business users, involved in that. So I would plan for some time to make sure you do the job well.
Yeah, well said.
So with the extended life of D7, how are module maintainers handling D7 modules? Are they continuing to maintain D7 modules through 2025 as well?
That very much varies on an individual maintainer. So the community expectation is that once November of 2022 hits, then all the maintainers' job is like, you're done. Like, that's it. That's all we were asking you to do. To be honest, there's a lot of Drupal 7 maintainers that dropped support for Drupal 7 a long time ago because they want to use the new shiny stuff over here. So if you are on Drupal 7, you may have noticed there hasn't been a new cool, like, change the world module for Drupal 7 in quite a while. And the reason for that is all the innovation in the Drupal community is happening on Drupal 9 at the moment. But that said, you know, what is not supported. So anyway, so the security team, the module maintainers, all the community people, all the stuff we get for free, that all ends November of 2022. Beyond that, there's a variety of vendors. Acquia is one of them that offer that extended commercial support. So it's on the vendors to support the core security problems, whatever contrib modules they choose to support or choose not to support. I think at Acquia, I don't want to be misquoted here, but I think we looked across our customers' fleet and came up with a short list of, say, I don't know if it's 100 or how many modules it is, but that will be in the list of modules that we continue to support going forward. I can't speak to how some of the other vendors are tackling this, but the short answer to your question is no. After November of 2022, individual maintainers, the Drupal security team, everybody else who's involved in the community support of Drupal 7, they go away and they focus only on Drupal, well, at that point it'd be 9 and 10. So they won't focus on Drupal 8 anymore either. And so if you're on Drupal 7 beyond 2022, it'd really be on whichever vendor that you're with, who's providing your vendor extended support, to explain the, you know, what that entails and what is and is out of scope of the engagement.
Thank you. So another question in a different direction is, does AMA work for Drupal 8 to 9, and will Acquia build tools like AMA for versions, you know, Drupal 9 and beyond?
Yeah, it does not work for Drupal 8 to 9. The reason for that is you don't need a crazy tool like AMA for an 8 to 9 migration, which is great. There are tools for 8 to 9 migration. Let me quickly, you can still see my screen, right?
No.
Oh, no, you can't because I stopped sharing. Hold on, sorry, this is me. Let me do, I know this is a Drupal 7 webinar, but let me do a quick run through of the tools involved in a Drupal 8 to 9 migration or a 9 to 10 migration and so on. The first one is a tool called Upgrade Status. You can actually use this in Drupal 7 as well. So this tool essentially gives you, you install it on your Drupal 7 site or your Drupal 8 site, whichever one you're migrating from. You install it there, and what it gives you is this dashboard that says, okay, cool, you're not on the right version of Drupal core. Also, you have these modules that you aren't even using, so you should remove those. And then you have these modules that are currently incompatible, but if you were to upgrade to the latest code, they're compatible. You have these ones that need, you know, changes or whatever it is. It basically analyzes your code and it gives you discrete next steps on what to do about them. So this is a tool that was built by Acquia as well as other folks to try to make that process really easy. And it leverages tools from other companies as well. One I want to call out is, I think it's, is it Upgrade Rector? I think so. Sorry, I'm doing this on the fly. But, Upgrade Rector is a tool for automatically scanning through your code and making the changes to your code that you need in order to make them happen. So this is based off work from Palantir, where they've taken the Rector library, which is like a refactoring library for PHP, and they've built Drupal-specific rules for it. So if you have Drupal 8 code, custom code that is using deprecated APIs, for a lot of those, it knows how to scan and do a basic find and replace of whatever you got in there, and it can hit a whole bunch of different updates that you need to do without you having to even think about it. And then the last page I wanted to call attention to is this, this kind of Drupal 9 deprecated status link. So this is looking at all modules across the entire community, and it's showing you, you know, this much of the pie, 54% it looks like, is explicitly Drupal 9 compatible. This chunk of the pie just needs literally a one-line change in the info file to be Drupal 9 compatible. And this chunk of the pie, you know, just needs you to run that PHP Rector tool and you're done. And so this is a really useful thing if you have one particular module that you're trying to figure out if it's Drupal 9 compatible or what the next steps might be, because a lot of times they'll have like little notes here that point you to whichever issue in the issue queue you need to look at, that kind of stuff. So what Acquia did do is we helped build and also built a bunch of this tooling around the Drupal 8 to 9 migration to make it easier. But because there's not a rebuild your whole data model, rebuild your whole theme, all that kind of stuff involved in the 8 to 9 migration, we didn't make a huge tool for that. We focused on the 7 to 9 migration. That said, the kinds of things you have to do for 7 to 9 migration, you also have to do for anything to Drupal 9 migration. So one possible direction of this in the future is to expand it out so it supports additional sources. For example, Drupal 6, WordPress, generic CSV files, that kind of thing. Because as I mentioned before, the Drupal migrate system doesn't care. It just needs you to define something coming in as a source. And once you've done that, it can manipulate it and do whatever needs to be done. So I'll quickly put links to those things in my in the chat, I guess. Hold on, sorry, having Zoom problems here. Panelists and attendees, there we go. So upgrade status is the dashboard. Upgrade rector is the tool to automatically make the code changes for you. And deprecation status, that's the tool to kind of view individual modules and see where they're at. And again, this is for 8 to 9 predominantly. Drupal 7 to 9 is a little trickier. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yep.
I feel like someone asked a simple question and I'm like, here's a 30-minute diatribe on that. Sorry about that.
Right. So for Drupal 8 and beyond, the best practice is to keep up with your minor version updates whenever they come out. Monitor things that are being deprecated in Drupal 9 so you can get ahead of it. And then the process from going from 8 to 9 or 9 to 10 will be the same process as if you were doing a minor version update. So if you just keep up with it, you should be in good shape and not have to go through a major migration again.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So the ultimate thing to do is every 6 months, we release a new version of Drupal 8. So every 6 months, take a look at, what the changes are. You can even space this out to once a year because we always support the latest version of Drupal 8 or 9 and then the one previous. But yeah, you'll basically, if there's any new system requirements, update those to make sure they're compatible. We don't tend to do that within a within a major version. We only do that when switching from one major version to the other. So like, I know there's talk right now whether or not Drupal 10 should require PHP 8, for example, is one discussion that's being had. So anyway, make sure that that's done. Update core and all of your modules to the latest versions. And then you'll get early notice if there's any kind of deprecations that, kind of are going to bite you when they eventually get dropped. You can remove any custom code or any deprecated APIs from custom code, and then you just update the core. So yeah, if you're keeping up every minor release or every other minor release of Drupal 8, it's even easier to do this. But even if you started using Drupal 8 and Drupal 8.1 and you left it sitting there forever, subsequent versions of Drupal 8 will not break backwards compatibility, but you'll just have, now you'll have like 2.5 years worth of work to catch up on when you're trying to do 8 to 9, or sorry, yeah, or 9 to 10, that kind of thing. So, yeah, good questions about Drupal 8. Maybe the demand gen team should know that there's demand for a Drupal 8 webinar for how to do this stuff. So, yeah. But what's nice though is that, yeah, going forward, Drupal 8 to 9, 9 to 10, 10 to 11, you don't need a crazy fancy tool like AMA to do that, which is great.
I think that's all the open questions we have